very excited to host our first ever Royal Rumble in Indianapolis this weekend, and really excited to have this be a part of it. My name is Sarah Meyer. I'm Chief of Staff and Strategy at Indiana Sports Corp. And at Indiana Sports Corp, we are a nonprofit organization. We've been around for 45 years, and our mission is to impact the community through sporting events. So over the past 45 years, we've hosted a ton of events, over 500 international and national events, including Final Fours, the Super Bowl, obviously, and just last year, the Olympic swimming trials and the NBA All-Star Weekend. But this WWE partnership is truly one of a kind. When we met with the WWE a couple of years ago, we really talked about, hey, Indy always takes things to the next level. How would you feel about committing to your top 3 major events and having them in Indianapolis? And we talked and we negotiated and we told them we can do it, trust us, we're Indianapolis, this is what we do. And it was really an interesting process because we learned so much about the WWE and how it operates. And I'm going to quote Lauren Sparkman, our local organizing committee co-chairs. She always says, you know, WWE is 100% sport and 100% entertainment. And I almost want to add to 100% community and 100% art. And it's been really wonderful learning the back end of everything that goes into a WWE production and everything that they care about as an organization. Just last night, we actually launched a redesign of the fitness center at the Boys and Girls Club in LaGuardia, which the WWE invested in. And this morning awarded 3 youth-serving nonprofit organizations $10,000 to help their mission of really giving access to sport to youth. So the WWE truly cares about their community, and that includes the art community. So before we get, yes. I know Joe's going to talk a little bit about the art activations too, but before that, I just really want to thank some key partners that made this possible for us. The IU Indianapolis Arts and Humanities Institute, Downtown Indy Chamber, and the IU Indianapolis Heron School of Art and Design. So if we could give them a round of applause. So with every major event, Indiana Sports Corp works to create what we call a local organizing committee. And I would encourage you to check out our website. You can get more information on how you can be a part of those committees. We create them for all of our major events, and definitely wanted to create a great one to really usher in this first Royal Rumble. So I'd like to introduce you to our co-chair of our local organizing committee for Royal Rumble, Joe Hellman.
Thank you, Sarah. Wanted to make sure that we shared a little bit about what's going on in and around Royal Rumble before we got into today's discussion. As Sarah mentioned, my name is Joe Hellman. My day job is the VP of Talent and Image for the Indy Chamber, but I have the distinct honor of being a co-chair for the local organizing committee put together by Indiana Sports Corp. And I'm doing that alongside the incomparable Lauren Sparkman, aka the Excellence of Execution. We're pretty sure Bret Hart's willing to share that moniker with her. And a special shout out to our stablemates and all of this planning, the glorious Dan Goliath from the Indiana Sports Corp team. Before we jump into today's discussion, I want to share a little bit of information about what's going on in and around Indy. So first and foremost, make sure to check out the Fountain Square and Fletcher Place neighborhoods. They have been transformed over the weekend, both from local artists, including commission pieces by J.D. Bills and King Rhodes, as well as independent wrestling themed restaurants, and so much more. Make sure to check out the mural that's on the side of the Murphy Arts Building in the Fountain Square neighborhood. It is amazing. It features 30 different superstars, and you have to see it to believe it. So next, the WWE and Fanatics has taken over the convention center in Hall E for their Superstore. That's also where photo ops and autograph signings are happening with superstars throughout the weekend. So make sure you have a chance to check out that. Tonight is SmackDown at Cambridge Fieldhouse, which for those not attending in person, make sure to tune in tonight, 8 p.m. on USA Network. Tomorrow at 1 o'clock, Indiana Sports Corp is teaming up with Trees for the Top Rope Tailgate. It's $30. It's all you can eat, starting at 1 o'clock, running through 11:30. You can watch the Rumble from there if you don't have tickets to the event, but we hope that those who are in town and have tickets to the event have the most amazing time. It will be the largest Royal Rumble in history, and we are so excited that's happening here in Indy. Last but certainly not least, the Royal Rumble, we're expecting close or over 65,000 fans to be filling Lucas Oil Stadium. This is the house that Peyton built, but for today, it's the house that WWE built. We have over 70% of that audience that is coming from outside of our market to attend the event, including a pretty significant amount of international travel, which is a phenomenal opportunity to showcase all the things that Indy has to offer, but also to showcase the spectacle that is WWE. And now, without further ado, let's get into today's conversation with our special guest. A few months ago, our local organizing committee received an email from a passionate IU Indy lecturer who wanted to explore the intersection between professional wrestling and the fine arts. Fast forward to today, and we're pleased to see this exploration come to life in today's conversation. So we're going to start by introducing Dr. Andrew Findley. He's a lecturer of classical studies and art history at Indiana University, Indianapolis, where he teaches courses in both disciplines. Additionally, he serves as a research fellow for the IU Indianapolis Arts and Humanities Institute and the managing director of the Religion, Spirituality, and Arts program. Please welcome Dr. Andrew Findley. Joining him today is our guest of honor, Rob Fee. Rob joined WWE as Director of Long-Term Creative in October of 2022 and made an immediate impact as he helped orchestrate the comeback of the former WWE champion, Bray Wyatt. Through an elaborate multi-platform approach, the White Rabbit Project drove six-figure viewership increases and record consumer engagement. Rob now serves as WWE's Director of Character Development, working directly with WWE superstars to establish narrative and continuity. Previously, Rob was a horror writer for Marvel, penning comics for Spider-Man, Daredevil, and the Avengers. He has been a head writer on multiple Disney shows, including 100 episodes of Disney XD's top-rated Player Select. Fee has served as a producer for a variety of programs and networks, including The Ellen Show, MTV's Ridiculousness, Epic Mealtime, Comedy Central, and National Lampoon. He's also worked in branded content at Netflix, developing worldwide campaigns across digital, print, and physical media. Let's give it up for Rob Fee.
Are we working?
Hello, John.
All right. Well, welcome, Rob. We're thrilled to have you here.
Oh my gosh, after that introduction, thank you.
That's all we really need. And speaking of that, like a couple of points of order. First of all, for the students that are in the audience, you can feel free to applaud every time I start classes. And I need to apologize to you because when we were setting up this morning and putting chairs, and we don't normally have chairs and a table out here, we realized that you might be more comfortable with a folding steel chair, just in case things go sideways.
I try not to take bumps.
And if you can believe it, we don't have a single folding steel chair in this entire building. We've got easels, we've got stools, mannequins galore, but not that. Welcome, Rob. We're thrilled to have you here.
Oh my gosh, I'm thrilled to be here. Are you kidding me? This is so fun.
And welcome also to all of you that are here and those who are joining online. I think we've probably got about 70 or 80 people watching us live on Zoom right now. But you're the star of the show. And I just want to open up by giving you a space to tell us a little bit about yourself. You're a long-term creative writer of arts and entertainment, and then have been involved professionally with the WWE for the last 3 years, 2.5, 3 years. What brought you to this, and what attracted you to redirecting your artistic output towards the storytelling and the story development of the WWE?
Yes, so I worked in entertainment for decades or years, I don't know. And I had, you work jobs that come along. It's not easy getting a job in entertainment, so a lot of times you take the job that's available more than the one that you want. And I got, very fortunate to work in a lot of jobs that I really enjoyed. but I never shut up about WWE. Like, any job that I did, I would try to work in wrestling stuff. On Ridiculousness, they were like, nobody here watches wrestling. Can you stop pitching wrestling videos? So when, and this is why I always think it's important to pursue what you enjoy more than anything, more than like, well, I gotta go after whatever what are people taking pitches for right now? Who cares? Like, do what you love. I worked on this horror show for a digital company that no one knows, and the owner of it said, hey, we have a partnership with Peacock. WWE's on Peacock. I know you like horror. I know you like wrestling. Maybe you want to meet with them and see. And this was like the dream of my life. I prepared for this meeting for like weeks, like rehearsing it nonstop over and over. And then when I met with them, they were like, well, we gotta hire this psychopath, because like all he talks about is wrestling. Like, I came in giving like statistics, number, all this stuff. I was like, here's detailed stories for anybody who wants. I sounded insane. And after it was over, they're like, do you want to come work for us? And I said, I will quit my job right now and come work for you. So it was very organic in how it came about.
So let's get down to it. Do you think professional wrestling is art?
I absolutely do. I mean, the performers, there's so many layers and levels to it, because you can watch it just on a surface level of there are these two men, two women having a match in the ring, and it's entertaining. Or you can dig into the story of it, of what's the lore, what's the backstory, what are all these, and find a whole other level to it. You can also do like the things we did online with QR codes and everything else, where you can really dig into the lore and lose yourself. But what I love about it the most is it's more than just there's a reason they call it the WWE universe, because it's more than just a show. You know, it's 52 weeks a year. There's 8 hours of live TV every week, and then an extra 2.5, 3 hours once a month. It's nonstop forever. I always talk about it like, you remember on Elf when they finish building the toys and they're like, we're done. Now let's start working on next year's Christmas. That's like how we are. Like, our time off is the 8 hours we sleep after WrestleMania to the next day. So the storytelling in it, there's so much opportunity to tell really, really rewarding stories that go beyond, oh, these two guys have a conflict. For example, you look at a Kevin Owens right now, who has stood by Sami Zayn, Cody Rhodes, all these people while they were fighting Roman Reigns and the Bloodline, and then they finally bring the Bloodline down, and then Cody and Sami are now helping Roman, and Kevin is like, what are you doing? These are the very guys that we tried to destroy, we got them out of power, now you're trying to bring them back in. But then he goes too far, and starts burning bridges, ruining all of his friendships. And there's just so much there for those that want the story for it. But what I love about it is you have that, or you can just turn it on and be like, huh, cool, look at these entrances. Look at their costumes, look at their music. Like, I don't think there's anything else that is accessible to everyone in such a tangible way.
I'm curious more also about the long-term storyline developments and how you've come in a few years ago. How do you integrate what happened before into what you do now? And I preface this question because I teach a lot of classical mythology classes. Classical myth is one of the bread and butter, flagship courses that the classics department has. And we're enjoying kind of record high enrollments right now. And one thing that I find students are often surprised by is that there's no one single storyline in classical myth. There are, through lines of rather consistent, the Iliad, the Odyssey, and characteristics and events that certain heroes, gods, and individuals have worked through. But depending on the place and the time, different elements are highlighted or diminished, depending on the needs of the community and how the community sees itself. We tend to look at classical myth as the unfolding of how a culture sees itself. So I'm curious how, when you're writing with a character, especially, for example, the Royal Rumble, when we'll expect lots of former wrestlers to come back to fill out that 30 men, 30 women in the ring. Like, how conscious are you of their backgrounds? Are there times that you seek to diminish or tamp down aspects of their characters and of their historical development, and how do you make those choices?
So I think we're in a really interesting time period right now, and I love that you brought up the mythology of it. It feels like Egyptian mythology was we discussed this a little the other day, Egyptian mythology was very much, all the gods were like the head of a cat and the body of a, you know what I mean? It was all these just creatures that were not really tangible, just these wild imagination things. And then as we moved into like Greek Roman mythology, it was much more men and women that were larger than life, but had flaws. You know, they had shortcomings. They would make mistakes that, you know, this God did this, and now for eternity, here's the result of that. And it really feels like that's where we moved as WWE, where, you know, in the 90s when I was growing up, late 90s, it was a lot of, I noticed so many gray hairs today, it was driving me insane. It was more of big characters, you know, everything was like, he's a garbage man, he's like the evil clown, he is, you know, a Macho Man, Hulk Hogan, all these big, you know, just larger than life invincible characters. And now it feels like we're in an era where they are still larger than life, but people that make mistakes and have consequences to their mistakes. And so what we really like to do is any action that happens is based on something that's happened before. And, you know, if this person aligns with this person, how does that affect their relationship with A, B, C, and D? You know, and if they turn on them, how does this person feel about it? Like when Jey Uso turned on Roman, you know, Sami Zayn welcome back, he's like, oh, and other people were like, why are we okay with this guy? Like, why is you're friends with him just because like he got kicked out of his group? And so we try to approach everything logically. You know, there's a lot of times that there'll be a pitch in the room that's like, well, what if this person did this? And somebody will say, why would they do that? Because this and this, like, we try to make everything logical. And that way when you're watching, if you see somebody that has now aligned with someone new, there's usually a reason for it. So I think that's the big part of it. We're all fans. And so when there's a story where like, it wouldn't make sense for this to happen. So I think really just approaching it with a fan mentality of, you know, respecting the audience, knowing that they keep up with these things, knowing that they know the details of who these characters are, and then building a story with them.
Well, speaking of building the stories and building the characters, we've got quite a few fine arts students in the crowd, all of whom have specific majors, and they work with particular mediums. It strikes me that even more than in entertainment writing for television or movies, or even comic books, where you're just developing a character and then someone will be bound to play that character later. Am I correct that when you are developing a new performer, or when you are reintroducing a performer that's been gone for a while and comes back with a new or shifted persona, are you focusing on certain aspects of their personality, of their skill set? Like, what is easier to work with? Would you prefer someone who's really good on the microphone, someone who's a really good, you know, has the body or the look for it, someone who's got a particularly charismatic personality, or someone who's great at improvisation? What are the keys to the medium you work with?
Yes, so I think we really try to play to everyone's strengths. I have a very fun aspect of my job where I get to do everyone's vignettes when they're coming back. And so like Shinsuke Nakamura came back recently, and we based his return vignettes off the physical media covers for Long Legs. You know, it was like blackface, red, washed out, because that felt like it fit his persona. But talking about like what aspects do you want to utilize with them, he's an incredible promo, but English isn't his first language. So if you bring him out to the middle of the ring and have him try to cut a promo in English, it's not gonna hit as hard because he's not speaking his native language. So with someone like that, we try to pre-tape them, shoot them off-site, and then subtitle them, because, first of all, we have an international audience that appreciates being seen and being heard in their own language, but also it's way more comfortable and realistic to the performer. We want to play to everyone's strengths, and we want to highlight what they're great at. So I think there's not one specific thing that we're looking for. Obviously, it's great the more things of those they can do, but if somebody is a big, giant, intimidating monster guy, and he's not the best on the mic, okay, let's put somebody with him instead of being like, good luck, pal, go out there and see what you can do.
Now, how do you cultivate those mic men and women? I think about the old managers that used to exist, whether it be Cyndi Lauper or Jimmy Hart, the mouth of the South. How do those, or of course Paul Bear, my own personal favorite, how do you go about identifying those people and attracting them into the business? Or are they already part of the business and then elevated into the WWE?
I think they're already part. Most people come in with a lot of times now it's significant others and things like that. But yeah, it's really just identifying their strengths, and if it's something beneficial for them, using that, and if not, don't really need it.
Are there any superstars in particular that you think are like five-tool athletes for WWE, the people that hit all the buttons, that cover all the bases?
I think there's a lot of them. I think I can't start naming names.
I didn't see anyone register online. So
no, there's so many good ones, and there's so many that are good at so many different things. And a lot of times it's really finding the best story for them. I think Liv Morgan's a great example of someone that came back from this injury, and she was like, I'm on the Liv Morgan Revenge Tour, I'm gonna take everything from Rhea, and you saw this sort of turn for her to a little more sinister, evil character, and then as she did what she said, she took Dominic from him, which it was probably a win for Rhea not to have Dominic. Which, by the way, there's nobody better than Dom. What a great bad guy. Everybody hates Dom so much. But it's really about finding a story for them that feels fresh. I think The New Day is a really great story going on right now of guys who were just the most wholesome.
Beloved.
Everybody loved them. And then in one instance, they're like, oh, we hate you. I sent Kofi a tweet this morning. Somebody posted a picture. They saw him on an airplane, and it was just a picture of them giving a And Kofi said, I thought the guy was going to take a picture with me, and he didn't. He was just genuinely mad at me and walked past me.
Now, a moment ago you talked about Shinsuke Nakamura and working with performers who are from other countries and whose native language is not English. How conscious are you and the other writers and performers about representing culture? I'm of the view, and those of you that know me know that I'm of the view that professional wrestling both is reflective of modern American culture, all the good and the bad, and a lot in between. And it's also does a pretty significant job for the last 50 years, at least, of affecting and shaping American culture in many ways. How conscious are you of that? And the voice that you, through writing, through the performers, through the staging of the spectacle, how conscious and careful are you with that responsibility?
Yeah, I think representation is probably the most important it's ever been. There's a really big focus on it. This partnership with Netflix really helps because you can watch WWE in 90% of the world now. So we want to make sure that, you see representation of yourself. You see a character that you can relate with. I think what makes WWE so impactful is that you connect with characters and you relate to them, so it helps to have people that represent your culture.
Do you enjoy writing for characters that resonate in a positive way or in a negative way? Because not all art has to be safe, and that's something that I think is important to pay attention to. Art can be Art can build community, it can uplift people, but it can also shock you, and it can scare you, and it can disturb you. How do you approach those two different dichotomies?
It's so fun. I like writing for a baby face, like a nice person is fun, but man, writing for somebody that's evil is just so much more fun.
For the non-professional wrestling audience, a face is a good guy or a good woman, and a heel is a bad guy.
Yeah, and I mean, listen, if you can go wild with some of the stuff. I know it. Who's it? Oh, Logan Paul. I get to write with him a lot. And see what I mean? And we'll write stuff together, and he'll say things like, "Oh, I know why you hate me. It's because you want to be me." And people are like, "I don't want to be you. I hate you." And it's like the reaction you get is exactly what you're going for, because
Very quickly, that is exactly the same scene that played out in my living room on Monday night with my 15-year-old son. He came and he's like, "Logan Paul." I said, "They're really good." He's like, "Yeah, I hate that guy." And then right then, there's one go, "Oh, you just want to be me."
right. I'm sorry. Tell your son I'm sorry. No, it's not. That was all Logan. I had nothing to do with it. But you know, you never get bored writing for it. Like, I worked on TV shows where you write for the same characters, and you're like, okay, here we go. But there's so many different. It's like it's a full cinematic universe, you know, of characters. And so, you know, you can write this cocky, young, arrogant stuff for Logan Paul with him, and then you work with, you know, like the White Six and Bray Wyatt when he was here and everything, and you got to be working these, like, I was a youth pastor for 10 years and grew up in Kentucky, like, and I knew all these, like, deep religious lore and everything, and be able to, like, see his vision and tie it into these mythological or, you know, religious symbolism and all this is so fun. Like, it's the best.
There is a lot in common between being a preacher and a pastor and a good promo shooter. Is that right?
Yeah, absolutely.
We rewatched Dusty Rhodes' famous Hard Times this morning at the breakfast table. And there is something about expressing charisma, reaching out and connecting with the audiences. How do you help coach the superstars in doing so?
So a lot of people take acting classes, which I always encourage, because it kind of like, when you're delivering I hate the term promo, because it feels like you're reading a script. It's not. You have to. I watched the movie Sing Sing the other day, and I don't know if you've seen it. It's fantastic. They have a theater program in the prison because it's good for the prisoners to be able to, like, find ways to connect with their emotions and express, you know, their emotions in ways that things have been bottled up or that they've never really expressed. And I think there's a lot of that in when someone's, you know, giving a promo in wrestling as well. You have to tap into something in yourself that, you know, may not be who you are, but some aspect of you that you can pull out and have that emotion. So I think what I push everyone to do is have fun. That's a big thing. I'm like, listen, what are you stressed out for? Like, you have the most fun. Are you kidding me? This is the best job. Like, have fun with this. And then there was a Whitney Houston quote where she talked about whenever she sang, that she sang every word like it was its own song. And so I tell people, I'm like, look, when you're delivering this, don't blow through the words. Like, I don't care if you've memorized the words. I want to know what the emotion is behind each word. I want to feel each word. And so I think when they really know that is when you can see that on like, they really feel that.
Do you have a user design experience, a user experience team? Because one thing I've noticed recently in the live shows, especially on Raw, is the ability that the entire show has to connect with different audiences, whether that be educational audiences, socioeconomic, political, as well as ages. One day, one of my children, who was 5 at the time, I said, you know, go clean your room or something. He says, you can't see me. He said, how do you know who John Cena is? And you know, my parents in their late 70s know who John Cena is. And that's a remarkable character and person who can reach to so many. But you mentioned Jay Uso earlier, who is a figure who I think very much appeals to not Gen X or older. I see him, I think, I don't understand. Like the colors and the glasses and the heat thing, it doesn't speak to me or to like my worldview. But then there are other characters who do.
And I think the cool thing about that is it's really a show for everyone. You know, if you, from a child all the way up to an adult, there's something you can relate with on it, whether you like comedy aspect, the horror aspect, just the bright colors and the fun music, like there's literally something for everyone in it. And if there's something you don't like, wait 10 minutes and it's on to something else.
But how do you find this? How are you able to connect with ever younger audiences as they go? I ask my students all the time, what are you listening to? What are you watching? Because I want to know how I can reach them better. Is there a process, or is it just through entertainment and integrating new and younger performers?
You know, I think Jay is a great example of someone that the way you see Jay on TV is really close to how he is in person. And I think for all in my search Yeet in my phone, most of it is from Jay Uso. And if you go back and look at his older stuff when he was in The Bloodline and these more serious roles, you could see glimpses of it there, but a lot of it is just letting their personalities come out. A lot of it is just like accentuated personality for them, and it's really interesting who resonates with certain age groups and with different audiences. Like my niece is 9 and she loves Charlotte Flair, hates Otis, I don't know why, hates The Miz, loves Becky Lynch. It's interesting to see who they like organically are drawn to.
Now you're currently preparing for Charlotte Flair to return to wrestling, is that right?
Yeah, she'll be Saturday night at Royal Rumble.
Oh, she is, right.
That was announced last Friday, I'm not supporting. I always worry because, things are planned so far in advance. I'll be talking to my friends and I'll be like, yeah, when this happened, and they're like, what? And I'm like, oh, that has to happen for another month.
Is that how far ahead the writing and the booking goes? Because I think you and I talked in an earlier conversation about responding to the audience. Penta, for example, is just too good, so you have to push it. Or you recognize that, Dominic Mysterio is just, he really brings negative attention and seems to be a natural at it. Or Rhea Ripley, who was meant to be an off-putting character and is immediately one of the most charismatic people on the show. How?
So the really cool thing about our show is that we don't have to do focus groups or anything like that. You get an immediate, response from the audience when they are like, no, we're booing you because we don't like you, not because of the character. Or like the ones that they resonate with and they cheer for, you get that instant reaction from them. We try to plan out, there are things that are penciled in. All of plans are penciled because so many things can change. You've got injuries, you've got, there are so many different things. But I would say there are things penciled in for the next year and a half. But all of that can change in an instant. Last year at Royal Rumble, CM Punk was going to have a major role in things going forward, and he got injured. So you pivot to, okay, how do we work this injury into the story? And it turned into eventually CM Punk and Drew McIntyre for 4 or 6 months in an incredible story. But we try to plan things out as much as possible with also knowing that it can change in an instant too.
So far we've talked about individual character development and kind of how people fit within long-term storylines. And a lot of our classics classes, I'm a Roman archaeologist by discipline, and the first thing I always get asked about is gladiators. And in prepping for this, the most common thing I got asked about was, well, it's just like the modern gladiator. Well, sort of, kind of in a way, yeah. But really what gladiatorial combat was like in the ancient world, what staged hunts were like, it wasn't necessarily about the individuals as much as it was about the entire spectacle. about creating a spectacle to engage a huge audience. In what ways are you and some of the other creative content folks in WWE focused on the bigger picture, on a single night? Like not just, okay, we've got these people, but the flow of the event. There's a meter and a pace to it. Promos cut with like surprise attacks, cut with surprise entrances, cut with matches, of course, and lots of matches. How do you go about building an entire show, seemingly on the fly, every week?
Well, we have
More than once a week, every five times a week.
we have like incredible teams. It's funny, people talk about the WWE machine, and it's just really talented people that work really hard at what they do, and they're good at their jobs. It seems like a lot of stuff is just happening on the fly, and it is sometimes, but it's live TV. Like if something goes wrong, we roll with that, and we make it into a story for the next thing. It's just a lot of really talented people working really hard.
Do you try and impress yourselves with every night? I mean, you said everyone is a fan that works there. I mean, are you trying to wow each other and even surprise one another?
Yeah, I think we try to make a show that we would enjoy as well. Triple H always says the worst thing that you can say about a show is, oh yeah, it was fun. Oh, it was all right. You know what I mean? Because it was like you're indifferent to it. The worst thing you can have is indifference. We try to make it. We're building to a big show, but all the shows along the way are just as big of shows. You have to make everyone feel like every show feel like a major event. So it's always pushing ourselves to be bigger and better.
Now, do you save things for big events like the Royal Rumble, WrestleMania, Survivor Series, SummerSlam? Are there ideas that someone comes up with, or we should do this, and it's scheduled for a Monday Night Raw or SmackDown, someone says, hold on. No, we gotta save this.
Sometimes, but I mean now every, with being on Netflix, now SmackDown's on USA, like every show feels like a big deal when you can get a huge match on any of those shows. I feel like I'm just doing a commercial at this point. I'm like, check it out every Monday on it. But no, it really does feel like, more than ever that every show is a big show.
So, wrestling's fake. How do you respond when people say that? Or do they even say it to your face anymore? I bet they do.
Of course. And I'll get people that are like, oh, well, they're wrestling. I think the performers that we have in it are some of the greatest athletes in the world. To be able to do what they do, nothing that they do is fake. Their bodies are put through a grueling process like any athlete or anything else, and they do it 52 weeks a year. I think it's way more impressive that they do what they do and don't kill each other, and also are acting and performing and presenting this emotion, in front of, they're doing this in front of a live audience constantly and on TV in front of millions, and everyone is looking for them to make a mistake or mess up. And I don't know anyone else that performs that way. It's always funny when people are like, well, that's scripted. It's like, yeah, have you seen any show on TV ever? Would you prefer they just go out and fight and we just see what happens?
Well, is it really scripted? In the in-ring performances, my understanding is that the outcome is predetermined. And there might be big moves, like if something particularly dangerous, they move outside the ring, a risk of injury, something like that. Those are mapped out in advance, but am I correct that the majority of wrestling in-ring performance is improvisational?
They work with producers to build out their matches, but things happen on the fly, like you have to adjust and change, and I don't know how they do what they do. It's incredible. Like the level of athleticism to be able to perform like they do and adjust on the fly and be at that level. I don't know if you've ever been in a ring. I climbed up to the top rope once and I was like, I gotta get in. This is terrifying. you run the ropes for like 30 seconds and you're like, oh my God, did my side gonna explode? Like, they are some of the most incredible athletes in the world, and I'm glad they're getting the recognition they deserve, because truly incredible.
In what ways do you try and connect the in-ring choreography with the out-of-ring character development?
Oh yeah, I think that definitely plays a part, and I think, you know, if you're a sinister, you know, bad person outside of the ring, that should reflect in your actions in the ring as well.
We only have about 20 minutes left.
Oh my
Now that I
God.
say- I know, right? And a little
Are
bit
you guys
less.
having a good time? Are you guys cool? If it gets boring at any point, you just yell something out and we'll pivot.
And we talked about taking questions from the audience.
Oh
Would you-
yeah.
Would you like to do that now?
Of course, yeah, that's fun.
Tristan, could you help me out with the mic?
Yeah, what do you need?
Do people have questions? No one? Okay. Here.
Yeah. I was gonna say, oh, yeah, here. I'm gonna be running around, so.
Thanks for sharing your storytelling efforts. I actually support CEOs and executives in communications, corporate communications, different arena. But one thing I'm always encouraging them to do is to, when people feel a connection, is to be vulnerable, because oftentimes that creates that connection with the audience and it builds that trust that you need. But I see your characters are doing it in a very different way. Vulnerability would almost be a weakness for some of your characters. So have you ever worked on storylines that have involved that vulnerability? And
That's a great question.
yeah, so tell me about that and how that connects with the audience.
I think, thank you for that, that's fantastic. I think vulnerability in the past would have been looked at as a weakness, but now it's, you know, we are in that Greek-Roman mythology time where you want to see those weaknesses. It's more relatable. A story we did not too long ago was when Bo Dallas came back after his brother died. You know, we shot these vignettes with him where it was like he and his Uncle Howdy counterpart kind of talking. It was like him processing grief, you know, and in it, the other part of it, if you haven't seen this, it probably sounds very confusing, but the other part of him is talking, and he's like, how did it feel when your brother died? Don't you feel like you're exploiting your brother's legacy? And it was all things that, you know, we had seen fans question online, or, you know, like other people had kind of felt, and it was like, well, let's just address that. Like, let's show, you know, how he's feeling about this real life thing, and the response to it has been incredible. Like, so many people have been like, you know, I lost someone and I was really dealing with this, and that really helped me connect, you know, and understand and process those feelings. So I think vulnerability is the key to any storytelling, because without vulnerability, there's no authenticity to it. Oh, you pick who get, I'm not gonna point you back.
Thank you, this has been fascinating. One thing that I've been watching specifically within the Greco-Roman world as the pop culture version of it, but I've seen it as a general trend, is this trend of reinventing villains. And so we've seen that with Wicked, which is so big in my household right now, I can't even. And I read the book that was based on it because my 10-year-old daughter wanted to read it. And I said, well, let me read it first. And within like 5 minutes, I was like, no. But in the Greco-Roman world, we've seen books on Circe, on Clytemnestra, on traditional villains, mostly women, who are being sort of reinvented as sympathetic characters. But then you have a problem of a lot of times that just makes them sort of incompetent good guys. So I was wondering if you could address that and sort of, is that something that you work with in wrestling? How do you deal with this broader trend?
I think as a culture, that's where we are right now as well. Like movies like Cruella, you know, there are people that, it's not as black and white. It's like, well, these people are good and these people are bad. It's like, okay, but why? Like, what happened to them, or what is motivating them to where we see them as bad? You know, so I think there's a lot more gray area in it where it's not like, now I'm a bad guy and I'm friends with all the bad guys and I wear a black leather jacket and sunglasses and you're a good guy and we meet you, you know what I mean? There's a lot more nuance to it. And I think that's what we want as a culture now is we want more nuance. We know that it's not as black and white as these are the good, that's what we were told for years is that like good guy, bad guy. But maybe how I see the bad guys, somebody else would see them as kind of the good guy, you know? And so I think that's a huge part of it. And not just in WWE, but in culture in general, that we want to know why people are the way they are. We want to know the why now. Yeah, I love that. Did that help? Did that make sense?
Yes, I saw people, I saw some more people over here, so.
You're getting your steps into that.
I am getting my workout in, okay?
So we know you worked on the White Rabbit campaign and that kind of what I'll call guerrilla marketing style of telling the story of hints throughout without outwardly telling the story all at once. How did that kind of thought process go out? Because it's not something we've really seen in pro wrestling before. And can we look forward to seeing more of that going forward, or is that something specific to the Bray Wyatt character?
So, yeah, great question. That was actually my first project with WWE, was doing the White Rabbit. Did you see the Nightbird one we did with the Wyatt Six?
Yeah.
So that was kind of a continuation of it. You know, so many things are like big splashy campaigns, and we were like, well, what if we do the opposite and just make it like you don't see the clue, you have to really dig. Like we would hide codes in for you that haven't seen it. Sorry, we're just chatting with us. For you that haven't seen it, there would be like just a flash of a QR code, and it would take you. You scanned it, took you to a website that would have some sort of puzzle or clues, and you would have to like decrypt messages and go into the HTML code and find clues and all these different little things. So it created like such a different experience to where it respected the audience at a whole other level, to where it was like, look, we're gonna make this difficult for you to figure out this story. And the fun thing about it is it creates such a community of people who just like want to solve these puzzles. It becomes a contest to see who can find the clues to this. It is exhausting for me. After a while, I'm like, they're like, give me more clues, and I'm like, I'm gonna have a mental breakdown, guys. But they're so fun. And yeah, I think definitely when it makes sense, that'll definitely be a thing we hit more of. We're trying to be a lot more, do a lot more teaser things like that, like before Penta debuted. Definitely not as subtle, but you know, there were these like teasers that popped up that built to him, and who was the War Raiders when they came back, they were like just some cryptic imagery, you know, to, if you're not into it, it's 10 seconds. For a QR code, it's a half a second. And so it doesn't really distract. But for those that want to dig into it, my God, there's like lore galore. It's so fun. Yeah, I love that stuff. That's my favorite.
So I've been a fan of pro wrestling for, gosh, this will be going on year 11 now, and it feels like, you know, I've always seen wrestling as a modern day epic, like as we were talking about with like the Iliad and the Odyssey, and so many long-term stories like throughout the history of wrestling. What would you say is the best example of your time being there as like the best long-term story that you've had? And then what would you like to do in the future as your next big long-term story?
Really quickly, if you do have questions about the Iliad and the Odyssey, I am here.
Thank you for that. I think one of the coolest, and 11 years you've seen most of this, all of it probably, is the bloodline. Just because like it's a real family, like the whole family tree, but it affects everything. Like when Roman lost the title, it like affects through every part of the company. It reminds, I don't know, did you ever play the game Destiny? You ever played Destiny 2? They always do this thing. It's not fun anymore, but it used to be really fun. You would do a raid, and if you did the day one raid, once the boss was defeated, it would cause like the whole planet to change, and like now people would have different things. And I always loved that aspect of it, of like the consequences of something, you know, like anything that has a ripple effect on everybody else is so cool. And I think Bloodline is perfect for that because they're a major part of everything. And there's still 100 more of them. You know, like all of them have 3, 4, 5 kids, and they all want to be wrestlers too. So that story's going to go on for 500 years. So I think that's a story that is fun and will continue to be fun.
Oh, there's so many people. Oh. Okay, we're gonna end up like the longest, I feel like.
I feel like you're really working yourself by doing somebody on the opposite
I'm
side.
trying to be fair to everyone, let me
Let
sure.
me introduce, this is Tristan, a student worker for the Arts and Humanities Institute. Working for our very first event today.
Wow.
So Rob, talk about your success, but what do you find is one of your biggest failures that just maybe you put your heart and soul into, but it failed to catch, or you were like, how did they not, they just responded negatively?
Yeah, and I think the fun thing, that's a great question. I think the fun thing about that is when something does go wrong, it becomes the story of like that going wrong. You know what I mean? I think maybe like personally, and this is a funny one, I did, the Alpha Academy had I don't think this is a failure, it just didn't pop off like I wanted it to, but you should all go check it out now. The Alpha Academy had a website called Join the Alpha Academy that has like how-to videos, tutorials, a phone number where you call and get a number from Otis, and then it got cut from the show and it just went to social, and it got like 100 hits. You know what I mean? I was like, this website's so good. So if you go to jointhealphaacademy.com, it'll no longer be a failure, and you can see that's the thing.
Hey Rob, thank you so much for coming and chatting with us.
Of course,
Really
thanks for
appreciate
having
it.
me.
I'm from Music and Arts Technology, and I was wondering if you could talk to us about music themes and when the choice is made of this character needs to make a change, we need to change their entrance, we need to change that choice, and trusting your gut on those kind of choices.
Yeah, so that's a big thing, especially right now, you know, where we got rid of the big, huge, you know, Tron entrance, and it's a smaller thing, so that was a good time to adjust entrances, kind of make some new decisions on them. I think when people come back from an injury or debut in the company, obviously that's a time to do it, but we're always trying to like tweak them and make them a little better. Like if you saw Penta's debut entrance, and then the next week there are always things added. So I think it's just kind of a continual process. Charlotte Flair has a whole new one that you're gonna see when she comes back. Jay Uso's, you know, him coming through the crowd. Even like Jacob Fatu, where now he like talks to the camera as he's walking through the back out. You know, just anything that kind of happens organically, or anything that an idea that's sparked that's like, oh, you know what we can do. It comes from everywhere. I watch a lot of movies, so any scene that I see, I'll send it to them and be like, we should do this, like let's recreate this. So if you see anything cool, please send it to me. It'll make my job easier.
Hi, I have two questions. The first one is, WWE really influences the world. You see graphics that appear on your shows, and then the next week it's on another sports show. But yet you all never get any awards or nominated. Do you feel like you ever will?
I hope so. I think so. Like somebody, a friend of mine at MSNBC texted me the other day, was like, "Why are you guys not getting nominated for Emmys?" And I said, "That's a great question." So I hope so. I think the team is incredible and deserves it. Yeah, I would love an Emmy for WWE.
My second, My second question is, the past few years has been hectic for WWE. 1 minute Vince McMahon is in charge, then Stephanie, then Vince, now a whole new team. Can you tell us how that's affected the creative process?
So I came in at the end of 2022, and so I got hired by Triple H, and I've only ever worked for him. So I don't really know what any process was like before. But I do know that everybody says it's the most fun it's ever been. Everybody talks about like how cohesive and you know, excited they are about anything. So I don't know what happened before, but I know now that it's a lot of fun.
Thank you.
I think we've got time for one more question.
Okay, you had your hand in the longest, so there you go.
When it comes to, when we talk about long-term storytelling and you write a bunch of stuff in pencil and, you know, things are always in flux due to injury and things like that, especially with narrative storytelling and all of these characters and things, they have to, the stories have to cohesively make sense and the character development has to feel natural and real. So when you're erasing some of these, like, oh, hey, someone gets hurt, it's in a big thing, 4 months later we have someone that would want to do this, but oh no, we're in flux, we have to move. How do you deal with naturally doing that character progression, not make the story or the character feel like it's like jolting to a direction that it doesn't belong in or feel natural in the moment, creating like a break in the story and the reality?
Yeah. I think Triple H is really good about letting things play out slowly. Like, he never rushes through a story. You know, we'll be like, what if this happens? And he's like, there's no need for it. We have an infinite amount of shows, so let things take their time. So I think by letting things kind of slowly play out, you know, and like the New Day turn is a great example. There was probably 2 months of them, you know, seeing that tension build and seeing frustration build. And so I think it's just a matter of like what we were talking about in the subtlety of it. You know, if we're going to, let's say, have, you know, this person turn on their tag team partner, that needs to be a slow told story. It can't be like when they comes out and punches him in the face. Like, where did this come from? You know, I think it's all about the storytelling of letting it just really slowly play out. And if somebody's hurt, you know, we have to kind of work that in. When they come back, how do they feel? What are they, you know? So I don't think there's an exact blueprint for it, but you just got to see how it feels, and that, like, if a story doesn't feel like it's there yet, give it a few more weeks of build. Does that make sense? You're like, yeah, sure, close enough.
I've got one final question.
Yeah, of course.
Over the last, I'd say probably, well, since the late 90s, one of the major transformations that's happened has been the growth of the women's division. Not just the growth of the women's division in terms of performers, but in terms of the way that women are represented in professional wrestling. You know, in the 90s, a lot of it was, well, big characters, but a lot of sexy ladies in bikinis. And now you've got so much diversity, and diversity of performance, behavior, and action, and appearance in the women's division. What's it like to work through that transition? And what are you looking forward to in long-term creative for the next 10 or even 20 years of the company? What changes would you like to see affected going forward?
Yeah, I think we're in a really great place to where, you know, it doesn't feel like, oh, this is the women's stuff and this is the men. Like, everything feels equal, you know, and I think we have incredible talent, like incredible performers on the men's and women's side. And I think their talent is what really drives that force forward, you know. I think as a culture, you know, we see people as very equal now more than ever, which is great. And then that's really reflected in storytelling as well. You know, I don't think there's anyone that would consider Charlotte Flair like, well, she's good for a woman wrestler. Like, she's incredible as a wrestler. You know, so I think that's really exciting. I'm just really excited to see it's walking around Indianapolis has been so cool the last day or two. Just seeing like how relevant WWE's is and everything, and for something that I've loved for so long and that I've seen so much, you know, joy from, for that to be such a big part of like culture now in every way is really, really exciting. So I don't know what to expect, but I'm very excited to see where it's gonna go. I think this is like just the beginning of some really cool things, and I think it's internationally is gonna be something that's very, very exciting.
Rob, we're excited to have you here. We're excited to host you and the WWE and everyone else, and really looking forward to the Royal Rumble tomorrow. Thank you so much for spending this hour with us. It's been a terrific experience, and I'm kind of hopeful. One of our goals at the Arts and Humanities Institute isn't to change people's minds so much as it is to bring together disparate audiences and maybe just change their perspective 1 degree, like an orienteering. When you're 1 degree off an orienteering, you're really far off. But if you just change your perspective by 1 little bit, you might see things a little bit differently. And it's my hope that through this, folks who are fans of wrestling are seeing it as a finer and deeper form of arts, and those that might not have encountered it in the past at all or given it much thought now see it for, I think, the complex and meaningful art form that it is. So
Can I ask you one question?
Yeah.
Are you excited for the Christopher Nolan Odyssey?
Well. As and my colleague in classics is sitting in the front row, we've had long discussions about this, and
I set you up.
yes,
I'm sorry.
yes, but there was that like recent Ray Fiennes, like straight. I think that was like straight to video. So I don't even know what happened to it. The Return with Juliette Binoche, and so that looked really interesting in our classics professor's text group. Until we saw the trailer, and so my expectations are reserved.
Okay.
But I'm very much looking forward to it because you never know. And Christopher Nolan's great, so we'll see. Thanks very much, Rob. We appreciate you.